Hi, my name is Danny Funt, Editor-in-Chief of the Hoya. I'm very happy to be at the Berkeley Center today, and I'm joined with Dr. Thomas Banchoff, the Director of the Berkeley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs, and as of July 1st, the first Vice President for Global Engagement. Dr. Banchoff, thank you for your time. When President DeGioia announced the creation of this position this summer, he said in a statement that he hopes this is part of an effort to strengthen our stature as a global university. What does a global university look like as you and Dr. DeGioia envision it?
That's a great question. And we've been engaged in a conversation over several years about precisely what it means to be a global university. And I think this position is, in some sense, a way to move that work forward. We're already a global university in many ways. If you think about our community, our global community of students and faculty, we've got about 13% international students now. Our undergrads hail from some 47 different countries. What's very interesting, even maybe more indicative of the global nature of the university, is that the students coming in, 1/3 of the total have spent some time living abroad. 1/3 claim to be fluent in a foreign language, with the emphasis on claim, perhaps. And when you look at our faculty and administration more broadly, 120 countries are represented as places of origin. So we're already a global community, a global university in many ways. But we're also in a competitive global context. In the context of globalization, with the world more interconnected, the higher education sector is becoming much more competitive, and the competition for the best students, the best faculty, for research grants on international topics has grown more and more intense. So being a global university has to be positioning us in that space, strengthening our existing global programs and initiatives, and finding ways to support our faculty and administrators as we deepen and strengthen our global profile.
So the Berkeley Center has been around since 2006, and of course for a long time Georgetown has been very active in expanding its international ties. What prompted the creation of this position this summer?
I don't think there's anything specific. I think it's accumulation of some of the trends I just mentioned, the acceleration of globalization, the world becoming more interconnected, our community becoming more global, and the president reaching the decision that the time was right to create an office that could support our faculty, our students, our staff as they seek to take advantage of international opportunities, as well as the sort of strategic context that I mentioned. We're already a global university. We've emerged as a leading global university under President DeGioia, but we can't rest on our laurels. There's a lot of competition out there, and this position is designed at this moment to strengthen our overall efforts to support faculty and students and connect their efforts as well so that we can collaborate more effectively as a community.
When you took over the position July 1st, of course it's part of a long-term vision for the university's growth, but was there anything specific that you and President DeGioia thought needed to be improved or corrected right away?
Well, I would say yes, in the sense that we've had a sort of organic growth of global activities across schools and departments, and we realize that there's not enough communication within the university around what's going on. There are barriers to collaboration that we can reduce going forward. We've reached a point of sort of critical mass of global activity, and it's a good time to take stock of things, and that's what I've been engaged in really the last couple of months, talking to people, finding out what's going on, administrators, faculty, with the students coming back. I hope to meet with student leaders to talk to those constituencies across the university and see how we can learn more about what they're doing, fill in those knowledge gaps I just mentioned, but also support them in their work going forward.
One of the top items on the university's agenda lately has been the so-called expansion of the next 100 acres, as in the development of satellite campuses around DC to expand graduate programs. With that, coupled with this expansion of our global engagement, many undergraduate students who tend to have a self-interested attitude might wonder if this signals some sort of diversion of attention from the undergraduate experience. What would you say to an undergraduate about how this will affect their time on the hilltop?
That's a great question, and I've thought a lot about it. I've been at Georgetown now 20 years, and I teach in the government department in the School of Foreign Service. It's critical that this new role and everything we do around global engagement strengthen our core academic enterprise, the teaching and the research mission of the university. Georgetown is a student-centered research university. So it's a kind of a litmus test. If we're working in China or Latin America, if we're expanding our partnerships with universities abroad, we've got 250 or more MOUs with universities in some 40 countries. We have to keep asking ourselves, how does this benefit our students? How does it create opportunities, study abroad opportunities, working with our excellent Office of International Programs? How does it create summer opportunities, research opportunities for our students? But it's not just what happens abroad, it's what happens on campus, and I think that's the first part of your question. How do we continue to internationalize, to globalize the curriculum, to respond to the interests of our students who, as I said, come to Georgetown with global interests? They want to have global experiences. How do we integrate international themes into our work across our schools so that our students are prepared to really go out and be leaders and citizens in a world that's growing more interconnected?
There are many international students at Georgetown. It's something that not only benefits them, but also benefits the classroom experience for every student at Georgetown. And yet, something that's been discussed a lot is the fact that because federal financial aid is not available to international students, for the most part, you tend to get a international student population that tends to be from somewhat of an elite socioeconomic background. How do you feel that affects the way in which they can contribute to the campus community, and is there anything that can be done to improve the diversity of the students who come globally to the Hilltop?
Well, that's a really important issue. It's not enough just to have international students. We want to have a diverse set of students, not just in terms of geographical origins, but as you said, socioeconomic, religious, cultural, ethnic, and so on. I have not had a chance in the last 2 months to see the data on this, but I do want to explore it. And as you said, one of the constraints we face is financial aid, which is very much geared toward students here, citizens of the United States. But we need to find ways, maybe working with our alumni overseas, to build on successful examples of support in those alumni communities for talented local students who would like to go to Georgetown, get the Georgetown experience, and are qualified for it. So that's just one example where I think we can make some headway. But I do want to learn more about that topic.
You come, Dr. Banchoff, from the Berkeley Center, which of course is very active in the role of religion and ethics in global affairs. I'm wondering, what role does Georgetown's religious identity play in how it goes about interacting with the international community and expanding its presence globally?
That's a big question. It all comes back, I think, to our Catholic and Jesuit identity, and there is a strong tie. This is one of our real comparative strengths with respect to our competition. From their inception in the 16th century, as you know, the Jesuits have always had a global frame. They've been out there in mission and dialogue, education and research. They've been engaging global questions of justice and human rights. And we're part of that tradition. So when we say that we are a university in service to the world, we mean it. That's part of who we are. The idea that we're training students not just to be successful professionally, but to give back, to serve the wider community, to be skilled in ethical reflection and intercultural communication. That's really the heart of the Georgetown identity and experience. So I think it should and it does infuse everything we do, not in a doctrinaire way, not in a narrow way, but in the way we've seen over the last couple of decades, in particular under President DeGioia and his predecessors. Georgetown is a Catholic and Jesuit institution open to other religious traditions and the wider world.
The elevation of Pope Francis, of course, brought a lot of global attention to the Society of Jesus. Does his global popularity and role in global affairs affect how Georgetown goes about making, expanding its efforts abroad and attracting students to our campus domestically?
There's definitely some impact, or I should say there will be some impact. Things move slowly with a new papacy. These are large structures like Georgetown that have been around a long time, and how his specific Jesuit identity will play out in his role as Supreme Pontiff and how that will play out for Georgetown, we'll have to wait and see. But so far, he has made a point of emphasizing the importance of Jesuit spirituality in his own life and in his reflection on world affairs and the challenges of his office. And there already you see a great connection with Georgetown and the role that Jesuit spirituality plays in our community and in the wider tradition. So I'm hopeful that, yes, it's a very optimistic context for our work.
We discussed earlier the study abroad experience, which is a huge selling point for the undergraduate experience and something that many undergraduates take advantage of in their time at Georgetown. At a conference just recently in June, you said that for any study abroad program, it's important to ask how much real immersion is going on. So I'm curious what your sort of reflection is on the state of Georgetown's study abroad opportunities, and what, if anything, do you see as ways in which those programs can be improved going forward?
Well, that's something that I'm learning about quite a bit, working closely with the Office of International Programs, which has been a pioneer in this field of study abroad, trying to understand their work and how it's developed and some of the challenges that they face. One of the things that distinguishes their work with respect to many of our competitors is the seriousness with which we approach all of our international partners, all of these study abroad experiences, to make sure that there's an academic component that links back strongly to the students' 4 years here at Georgetown, but also that there's a cultural immersion component, that this is an opportunity to extend learning beyond the classroom, as you said. It takes a lot of work to get that right. There are a lot of committees, there's a lot of review of each program, and there's always going to be a trade-off between giving students more options perhaps and sticking with the partners where we've had tremendous success in the academic field and on the cultural immersion side. But as I said, I'm just learning about this, and Kathy Bellows, the head of OIP, would be the person to talk to.
Although it's not specifically tied to your new position or your role at the Berkeley Center, you have been very involved in ethics and university ethics, and specifically ethics abroad. And I'm curious about an ethical issue that caught a lot of the campus's attention over the last couple years. Just as some quick background, in January of 2012, a group accused Adidas of failing to pay employers at a closed Indonesian plant $1.8 million in severance pay. Cornell University and several other schools in September of that year cut ties with Adidas because of those concerns, and a Georgetown Oversight Committee recommended to President DeGioia that the university follow suit in October. And yet it wasn't until January of this year when the university chose to finally terminate that contract. Do you think that the university handled itself appropriately in dealing with this type of international ethical issue?
Well, as you mentioned in the timeline, this all took place before I moved into this position, and I have to confess, your review of the facts was helpful to me, because I didn't follow it closely, or I did follow it at the time, but haven't had a chance to reflect much on it since. I think the system worked in that ethical concerns were brought to bear by students concerned about Georgetown's global engagement. That's absolutely appropriate, and ethical standards should always play a role in the sorts of corporate partnerships we enter into. I don't know enough about the consultation process and so on, but it sounds as if the matter was resolved through the normal procedures, and that we do have a process for dialogue within the university on these kinds of questions. So again, I need to learn more about that important aspect of our work.
Historically, the Georgetown's athletic program, specifically its men's basketball team, have been influential in not only being something that a lot of students and alumni look forward to, but also a way of promoting the university and enhancing the academic experience, at least in the last 30 years. And most recently, the men's basketball team traveled to China to compete in some exhibition games in 2011. and now in November they're returning to Asia to play the Oregon Ducks in South Korea in November. So in addition to this being some sort of preparational opportunity for the team, what promotional effect does it have for the university to that global audience?
Yeah, I think it definitely has what you call a promotional effect. It helps to draw the world's attention to the university, to our great student athletes, helps to dramatize global engagement and collaboration, cooperation with other countries. So in a sense, the basketball team is one of our main ambassadors in the world at large. I think it's very important work.
Lastly, Dr. Banchoff, we've discussed a lot of the ethical and principles that guide the university and how the university conducts itself. I'm wondering specifically with you, is there an underlying value that you feel ought to guide how the university proceeds in engaging with the global community?
Well, it's always tricky to come down on one particular principle. I would have to come back to, if you're pressing me on this, which I respect, this idea of a university in service to the world. A lot of universities talk about it, but we really mean it. The students who come here are looking for that. Our alumni believe in it. The notion that you're here to get an education, but you're also here to go out and change the world for the better. And in the context of globalization, our global engagement efforts have to be designed to support that work of formation of our students so they can go out into a world that's more diverse culturally, religiously, and make a change, make a difference for the better.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Banchoff, for your time. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. And,
my pleasure.
It seems that people in the campus community are very interested in what the university is doing in terms of on and off campus expansion. And the Hoya will, of course, be in touch this semester to check in on what you're doing in this new position. So thank you again.